Welcome to Starcade Stories. Kris Budden, ESPN sideline reporter. Kris, I'm glad to see you made it out of Ole Miss okay, because I saw you down there with Lane Kiffin after the game, and it looked like things were getting a little dicey, a lot of bodies, but you made it out unscathed, it looks like.
I did. Yeah, there was beer being, let me do this. There was beer being thrown. There was water bottles being thrown at refs. It was crazy. And then all of a sudden you start seeing the student section, they got like 1 foot over the brick. And you're like, they're coming. So I went behind Lane Kiffin's security and I said, hey, can I follow you out there? Because in a crowd storming, if you lose the coach, like from the get-go, you're done. Like there's no way. The field in 30 seconds is like completely filled. So I made it out alive. They finally stopped scoring points about 30 minutes ago. Game ended, and Tigers will be coming to Como this weekend.
Yeah, 55-49. And for LSU, to me, it's kind of about how they respond. Because we've seen LSU teams in the past, whether it be a Les Miles team and an Ogeron team, kind of once they get behind the 8 ball, once they lose a couple games, that's like, oh man, the season's kind of off the rails here. How do you respond? This is not, Oxford, Mississippi or Baton Rouge on a Saturday night. It's Columbia, Missouri, a place very special to us, but to them, it's 11 a.m. Temperatures are going to be like 45 degrees in the morning. How do they respond, especially in an environment? I think it's going to be raucous, but yet this is not kind of what LSU's used to, and they've got a couple losses. How do they respond here?
Yeah, I think part of it is how do you rebound from the idea that the national championship is gone?
Yeah.
Right? Like that was your hope coming in. You play that Florida State game, you lose that kind of in a heartbreaker way. And then, at that point, it's the writing's on the wall for you. If you can win out, you're still in the national championship, or at least in the college football playoff. How do you respond now that that's out the window? A 2-loss team isn't going to make it, particularly in this season. And then I think it's fixing the missed tackles and you have so many players on that defensive front for LSU. They're going to be first, second round draft picks. Mason Smith, Mekhi Wingo, Harold Perkins. And how you let Quinshon Judkins run for 33 times for nearly 200 yards. You have a secondary that can't tackle. It's how do you fix that? Because that offense can't do anything more than they're already doing. And that's got to be frustrating for Jane Daniels and crew of how many points do we have to put up to be able to come out with a W? And so, listen, they've hired an extra analyst this week to try and fix whatever is going on the defensive front. It's head scratching when you look at the talent that is on that team.
Yeah, and for Missouri, 5-0 here for the first time since 2013. Eli Drinkwitz's Tigers came out of the gate a little slow. You beat a South Dakota. Middle Tennessee State was probably too close for comfort. Then that Kansas State game kind of put everything out on the table for the Missouri Tigers, and coming in here to try to replicate kind of that environment here on Saturday. It's going to be crazy. Brady Cook breaks the SEC record, 348 straight passes without an interception. To me, that's the key, is these offense go head on head. A turnover, who's going to protect the ball better? So far, we've seen that's been Brady Cook and the Missouri Tigers.
Yeah, we'll see what LSU changes on that defensive front. If we see them blitz more, be able to do a little bit better in the pass rush and make Brady Cook uncomfortable. I mean, you mentioned the streak to break the SEC record for completions without a turnover. And in today's day and age, it's funny, you go in, you do all these coaches meetings, and we ask for keys for the game. And every single time it's win the turnover margin. That's great insight.
Copy and paste.
Yeah, copy and paste. But that's what it comes down to. And, listen, Lane Kiffin said the same thing last week of this is going to be a game where we got to score 50 some odd points. And it's boiling down to what that looks like again this weekend. Missouri's going to have to put up some points because for as good as their defense has been, particularly against the run, they're average against the pass. And Malik Neighbors, Thomas, they've got weapons there that LSU is able to use. And so to me, this is a game that if Missouri's going to want to win, they're going to have to continue putting up points.
Well, in my research, I've got to say, Kris, you and I are like almost the exact same age, like almost like a couple of weeks apart, right? So just using my memory, the math, it all checks out. You were at Mizzou kind of at the time that Brad Smith exploded onto the scene, into the Chase Daniel era, maybe a little bit. So you've seen some big time atmospheres. You saw Missouri kind of under Gary Pinkel come onto the map here, but it's been really 10 years, 9 if you count the SEC East Championship team of 2014. But to see where Missouri is at right now, it's taken a long time for Coach Drinkwitz to get back to this point, and just kind of talk about your time at Missouri and seeing those great teams, Brad Smith and on into Chase Daniel, and that really got Missouri, got to number 1 in the country in 2007. And it's hard to do in this day and age in the SEC, but Missouri's trying to get back to something resembling that.
Yeah, my time was awesome. It was, I believe, 2 years of Brad Smith and then 2 years of Chase Daniel. And it was, I remember running out onto the field when they beat Nebraska, I believe in 2003 would have been the season. Yeah, and carrying the goalpost to Harpo's. And I remember a poster being sold in the bookstore of everyone hanging on those goalposts. And then they stopped selling them because it was, quote unquote, promoting an illegal activity. That was my time. It was sleeping outside the Hearn Center trying to get a front row seat to Kansas. And so you had people always ask that aren't from Mizzou. It's hard to get to. It's kind of in the middle of nowhere. It's a smaller town that people travel into to go to games. And they're like, what is it like? And I'm like, when it's good, when the athletics are good, it's really exciting. And when I went to school there at the beginning, they were a basketball school and transformed into a football school. I still have somewhere in this office that I'm in a laminated copy of the BCS of the one only week that Mizzou was number 1. And then there's a little bit, then they lose to Oklahoma the next week. There's a little bit of am I waiting for the other shoe to drop? Am I waiting for a 5th down? Am I waiting for, but this, for Eli to get this team back to national recognition. And heck, maybe if Texas and OU were both undefeated this weekend, maybe game day would have headed there if everything had played out correctly. And I think for Drink, he gets the contract extension last year, and there were a lot of critics of why, 500 record, Barry Odom had a 500 record and he ain't coaching there anymore. But the recruiting was really good, and you had the pieces and you had the talent, and how are we going to put it all together? And Drink, like a lot of coaches, has said, there is too much for me to do as a head coach, as a CEO, than to continue calling plays. And you've seen a lot of it, whether it's Jimbo Fisher, Gus Malzahn, Hugh Freeze. And so there was this self-recognition of, I can't do it all. And now not only has he kept the talent in state, now there's this pride there of people from St. Louis are like, no, I don't want to go elsewhere. I want to stay here. And it's been really cool to watch from the outside. I'm excited to be a part of that atmosphere on Saturday.
Well, it doesn't hurt, Kris, that a player like Williams Nwaneri, a 5-star defensive end here out of Lee Summit, can make money as a senior in high school from NIL. And I think that's a game changer. And Missouri, I think maybe Missouri is finding they have the right coach, the right setup, the right infrastructure to cash in on this, and a state law that has sort of allowed it. I think that probably a lot of states are going to look at this and go, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I'm looking at you, Texas, Georgia, Alabama. A lot of states are going to probably piggyback onto this and make it a reality. But that's the world we live in, Kris. It's a different game than say when we were in college.
Yeah, you have to have the lawmakers. I live in a state in Texas where they're not able to make money off NIL. It's the whole reason that Quinn Ewers went to Ohio State and left early from South Lake Carroll High School so that he could go make money on some sort of kombucha deal. Maybe he would have gone to Texas earlier and not signed with Ohio State if that sort of rule was in place. But I will say this, they can't do it until they sign, and he's not signed. So had this season gone off the rails and they weren't looking, at an undefeated season right now, and they were looking at 5 losses instead, maybe he doesn't end up signing in December. So it's also part of the legislature for changing the law and making that possible. But they also, in today's day and age of transfer portal, it'd be great if he stayed the whole time. We see that all the time nowadays. Like a 5-star comes to some place, or maybe even Eli's able to get someone that's like a 2 or 3-star and develop them into somebody. And then what happens? Makai Wingo, then he leaves after a bit because he wants to go to a place that's going to win a national championship. It's not about just getting them on your campus. It's about making them stay.
Kris, I got to talk about your crew, because I think that you don't have to brag about what you guys do. I'll do it for you. I think this is the best crew in college football right now. You, Bob Wischusen, and RG3. you guys do such a great job. And I'm really big on broadcasting crews. I go back to some NFL crews that I just like fell in love with as a kid, and the Monday Night Crew, Frank and Alan Dan, and so many more, so many others. Keith Jackson on the college side. Your crew, you guys are really hitting on all strides. I think your broadcast last week was tremendous. Just talk about what it's like working with two pros like those guys, man. RG3, I'll tell you this. I like people that say things, and RG3 says things, and it's entertaining, and I love it.
Yeah, he definitely has his own brand, and he's fun and exciting, and he's different. And you know, you can look at all different analysts, and they all each have their own. Like I worked with Dan Orlovsky for a couple of years, and I want to break down film. I'm like into the exit. Like he's just so like football brainiac, sees the game differently than anyone I've ever been with. Robert brings a fun, younger, different perspective who like you can leave a game. You can't get into a game without 18,000 people asking for selfies from him. It's just, you know, it's a different dynamic, and he brings a joy that which he broadcasts with, which is a lot of fun. And Bob is, I joke that like Bob's become like my work husband because we also do basketball together, and we've been on football for like the last 5 or 6 years. We work with Dickie V during basketball season and Big 12. So him and I have been together for forever. And that's kind of fun because our families know each other. And when you're on the road all the time, it's nice to have those people that feel like family. I've met his kids. He's met my kids. And that's super important to have that kind of camaraderie when you're on the road, you know, 52 some odd weeks a year.
Well, keep up the good work. You guys do a great job. I want to ask a little bit about sports media in and of itself, because you went to University of Missouri, one of the top journalism schools in the country. And, you know, when I got into this, I didn't go to J school, but I got into this 11 years ago, built my own sports media brand from the ground up. And man, I was serious about it. I'm writing 1,000-word articles about Mizzou games, I'm in Kansas City, so we cover the Chiefs as well. Wow, have things have changed, Kris, because in the last 2 weeks, I've written more and just consumed more Taylor Swift content than I have anything else. This is where we're at. I mean, it is truly crazy. I'm almost like, you know, you got to adapt with the times. What have you ever seen anything like this Taylor Swift?
No, and I'm all here for it. Like, listen, if the NFL wants to like air free Taylor Swift commercials because they know there's extra 10 and 11-year-olds watching, I'm all here for however like the eyeballs get to the screen. And it's a little bit of the same way you talk about like the difference of broadcasting. We're really leaning into access on a college football broadcast, and hopefully basketball soon, of doing these in-quarter interviews instead of just halftime, and being able to get players, you know, at a halftime interview. Like the more we lean into that, the more access is better for everybody. It's better for these athletes, for their brands. I know head coaches don't like their quarterback talking at halftime, but I'll tell you what, if you're a quarterback and you got NIL deals and you want to be all like 3.7 million people watched our game, Ole Miss LSU. Like that was the second highest watched game. If you're a quarterback or you're anyone on that team, you want to be in front of a microphone. And I get why coaches don't want to do it, but like watching Deion Sanders, watching Dan Lanning do pregame speeches, like to me, Nick Saban criticized it. If I'm a player sitting on a couch watching Dan Lanning's pregame speech, I'm like, I want to go play for that guy. I want to go run through a wall. And so it is, you know, the landscape is changing. When I went to Mizzou, I was like sending out VHSs and going to FedEx and paying $10 a pop every time I wanted to apply for a job. And now I have people ask me, how do I do what you do? How do you get to ESPN? And there's so many different ways now. Like when I was there, it was you go to a local news station and you work your way up. You one-man band, you do the camera, you do the editing, you do all that. Now there's team reporters. There's so much more social media aspect to it. So now there's not one path, which has been nice. And, you know, I can be on the radio talk. Like I spent 30 minutes the other day talking about Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift on a Sirius XM show. Like, you know, who would have thought that like 20 years ago that would be, you know, 2 segments worth of content on a radio show.
Yeah, we started out covering the Matt Castle, Romeo Crennel era Chiefs, and being a lifelong fan as well. It's like, well, this is definitely different. And I don't know. It's like I'm just trying to, like you said, embrace.
I joke because you know, there's people that think this is fake, and like they're not actually dating. And I'm like, they went to Lawrence, Kansas together. I don't think fake relationships take a visit to Lawrence, Kansas to go to Free State Brewery.
I hope not. That's not a place I would find myself on a date, Kris. You can better believe that. I'll tell you, I envy so much about what you guys do, but trying to nail down like a Nick Saban in between a quarter, every time I see it happen, I'm just like, oh God, it couldn't be me. I couldn't do it. That's got to be it. I mean, someone like Lane Kiffin, it's got to be, but Nick intimidates me. I've been to SEC Media Days like 4 straight years, and I'm just like, the questions that people ask him, it's like I have like secondhand embarrassment where I want to like work my way out of the room. Because someone asked him like, what kind of music do you pump up on before you go out there to coach? And I'm just like, I got to get out of here.
Oh no.
Can't do it.
I know. I'll tell you what the hardest thing to do is I've had a lot of games where he's coached in blowouts, which I did Alabama USF. So I was fully expecting that to be a blowout. And, he's never complimentary at halftime. They could be up 62-0. And what do I ask here? Because he's going to be pissed about something. So it's like, I don't even know. That's the hardest thing to ask. Like the pre-games, the having to ask about the quarterbacks, like he's respectful because he understands that's your job and he may not answer it, but he's respectful of you got to do a job. And if you ask a smart question, it's the, being up 60-some-odd-0 and having to come up with a smart question, knowing there's some facet of his game he's probably pissed off about.
Well, Kris, you've done so much in sports media. You've lived in Knoxville, Tennessee. You've done radio. You've stood on NFL sidelines. But for you, is there anything like being on a sideline on a college football Saturday in a ramped up environment? Because, I've always had the NFL and college football has always been kind of 1A and 1B to me. I love them both so dearly. But for you, is there really anything like what you experienced in Oxford last week, what you're going to have on your hands here in Columbia on Saturday?
Yeah, particularly in the SEC. I get asked all the time, like, do you want to do NFL? And I was an NFL sideline reporter about 10 years ago for, wouldn't that be old?
We're getting there, I know.
Yeah, for Fox. And thinking about the Chase Daniel, Brad Smith eras make me feel really old. I like the NFL, but it doesn't have the same kind of feel that an SEC Saturday football game does. Whether you're standing at Jordan-Hare and the Eagle comes and lands, or you're standing in Neyland Stadium and they run through the tee. There's traditions. There is an intimacy of, it's not. Yes, there are portions of the game that are about money now, but the fans that all are in there grew up, went to that school, paid money to go to a school. They weren't just there because they grew up in the city. There's a difference in the fan bases and a different level of passion that I find. And I also just enjoy covering the athletes at that age because, they're not married with kids and only there for the money. There's still a innocence to it that I really, really enjoy.
Well, while you're there, make sure you grab some of the new Luther Burden El Vienna chips. They're amazing. The ranch flavored. I'm all in it. Hey, I'm embracing every bit of it. When you come back this weekend, is it kind of all business, or do you like, hey, I am kind of at my alma mater, go around to some of the old spots? Do you have time to do that?
I'm gonna hit up Flat Branch, which is my favorite place. It's funny, like people are like, "Oh, this new spot opened up. You should try this barbecue joint." I'm like, I don't want to go back there for the new things. I want to go back there for the old things. And listen, a bunch of my friends and former roommates live in Kansas City and St. Louis. So I've been like, hey, come drive on over, come to the game, come hang out afterwards. And some of it also is, I don't think that RG3's been to Columbia before. So it's getting to share a little bit of what I grew up with. And what I experienced with those people and get to shine a light on. I know it's hard to get to, and everyone in broadcast hates trying to get there. But hey, now they got direct flights from Dallas to Columbia, so sign me up anytime.
Come on, yeah, that helps right there. It's going to be great. And we almost had kind of a. You talked about the 03 Nebraska game. I was on the field for that as well. My mom was like, don't run down there. They're arresting people. That's how it used to work, right? You'd arrest the first 3 people.
I called my dad. I said, hey, if I get arrested, will you bail me out? And he said, no. I was like, shoot, I'm going to take my chances. Like the guy in the yellow shirt. I don't know if you saw this clip at Ole Miss. There was like a security guard in a yellow shirt, like trying to do side shuffle, trying to prevent people. And it's like hundreds of people and it's just him. It's like, how are you going to arrest me?
It's futile. And that was the game that a Nebraska player punched a Mizzou fan. And I think it happened again last week at Ole Miss, an LSU player. I saw a video.
It did. Now I was telling my crew, I was like, they said, do we need to hire you security? Do they think that Mizzou fans would rush the field? I'm like, they did against Kansas State. I would think so. I mean, I know it's a steep fine the second time you do it. I will say, like, that game against Nebraska led to the collapsible goalpost, though. Like, there's no taking them down to Harpo's anymore.
Yeah, that's right. That was such a tradition. And now you'll feel like, I don't know, maybe after that Missouri season, you beat LSU, that maybe you're just more established and maybe you won't see it. But I will be down there, Kris, on Saturday. Can't wait. And I'll definitely have to say hello. Thanks for coming on. It's been such a pleasure. Again, everything that you guys do, because to me, football, the broadcasting side has always been so important to me. I always say that, like, the players, that's the music on the field, but you guys write the lyrics, and that's so important. And it really carries over. So you guys do great work, and we can't thank you enough, Kris.
I love that. Thank you so much. And excited to be back in Como this weekend.
Yeah, let's do it. We'll see you on Saturday. Thank you so much.
Yep. Thank you.
You bet.